District Staff Officer for Incident Management for D11 North. I'm sharing with you today the presentation we made at D-Train in March of 2015. Our purpose with this presentation is to give you information about the new Auxiliary Incident Management Program. If, while watching this, you have ideas, comments, or concerns, please write them down and send them to me by email. Our notion is to take all these thoughts that we get from both auxilarists and active duty, put them into a gap analysis, see where we have opportunities to further support Coast Guard units, make a plan out of that. This is likely to be a multi-year effort. Incident management in the auxiliary is very much a work in progress. We started out in January at N-Train, being briefed for 2.5 days on the program, and that's some of the material I'm going to share with you today. Again, my name is Bruce Martin. I'm with Flotilla 11-4 in South Lake Tahoe. I've been in the auxiliary for about 2.5 years. I retired as a fire chief in the city of Fremont in 2012 and joined the auxiliary shortly thereafter based on my positive professional interactions with the Coast Guard for the 35 years I worked. In my 35 years, I was an ICS practitioner, qualified in several different positions, and I ran for a number of years a Type 3 incident management team in the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area. It's a 2-county team made up of emergency managers, fire professionals, law enforcement, public health professionals. Our agenda today includes why incident management was created, the components of the incident management program, how so far we think it relates to other auxiliary programs. At D-Train, we actually did a tabletop exercise and used ICS to plan a flotilla picnic. Keep that in the back of your mind because I'll make you an offer by the end of the presentation. And then I'll also show you how an incident management team works or is used in a large-scale event. Incident management is clearly a work in progress, like I said. It's found in the Auxiliary's National Strategic Plan 2014 to 2020 on the national website. It's really an extension of what we do and what you know we do as the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary. It is not going to change anything that we do now. Operations remain operations, aviation, communication, auxiliary food service, all of our different programs remain the same. Incident management is intended to be an enhancement and a conduit for some of that, working very closely with the auxiliary sector coordinator. Of course, we all know the different areas that the auxiliary can participate with the Coast Guard. We have everything from watchstanders to medical professionals, bands, musicians, cooks, and of course, recreational boating safety, our primary function. Throughout the years, the auxiliary participated in a number of incidents and events around the country, supporting the Coast Guard in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, various special events, large-scale events, boat lift, and then Hurricanes Floyd, Irene, Katrina, Sandy, and Deepwater Horizon saw auxiliarists deployed for a variety of functions. At Katrina, they cooked and performed public affairs. At Superstorm Sandy, auxiliarists rebuilt a Coast Guard station. In Deepwater Horizon, Coast Guard auxiliarists provided just-in-time incident command system training to reservists and active duty Coast Guard personnel. And while this slide speaks more to the operations side of what we do, the bottom bullet point is important because just like any agency, the Coast Guard resources can find themselves overwhelmed if the event is large enough or long enough. And that's a place where we think the auxiliary can play a role in providing surge capacity in the world of incident management. The Coast Guard is a very experienced and good, strong user of the incident command system. They adopted it as their all-risk incident management system back in 1998. And in 2004, all government entities in the country were asked to adopt the National Incident Management System, NIMS, of which the Incident Command System is is one of the components. NIMS provides, the way to think about it is it provides a common language across the country. When responders from California go to New Orleans or go to New York, in terms of managing the response, we all use the same terminology, we use the same basic system. ICS is really simplistically a management tool. Military folks will know it as a C3 tool, command, control, and communications. Really, it allows you as a responder to know what your job is, who your boss is, and who's working for you. And it keeps us all aligned in the same mission, working productively to the same plan. That's the ideal. At Deepwater Horizon, that was a huge exercise in the incident command system, and the Coast Guard reinforced its commitment to using the system. They have a high training standard, and experience and qualifications both matter, but in the world of the incident command system, there's certification, you take a class, there's then qualification, you work a task book and perform the functions under a mentor or assigning authority, and then you are qualified to perform in the role to which you've aspired. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. As I mentioned, for Deepwater Horizon, auxiliaries were deployed as public affairs officers, just-in-time ICS instructors, cost unit analysts, and many other tasks. But some of the lessons we learned were that getting orders, getting deployed, getting reimbursed, and some of those other administrative functions were an issue when it came to auxiliaries. Incident management is a constantly evolving and expanding function in the Coast Guard. And we recognize that auxiliary members have different needs in terms of training, travel, and readiness. So while Coast Guard sectors have articulated the need for us, we have to figure out how best to provide that need of willing auxiliaries and capable auxiliaries and make sure that they're taken care of as well. To that end, the incident management program was created, as well as a new district staff officer position for incident management. Right out of the incident management role description, which you will be able to find on our webpage on D11, you can see that the role is to provide support in contingency planning, response planning, the notification and tracking of auxiliaries through our incident management systems, using the skill bank and helping to educate folks on the skills bank, assisting in the deployment and demob of AUX members, and assisting with exercise planning, among other things. The way we see it right now in District 11 North is the DSO incident management is a quasi-deputy to the auxiliary sector coordinator. So we are not changing that at all. This auxiliary sector coordinator remains the primary link for operations between the active duty and the auxiliary. But we think the DSO IM working under and with the ASCs will be able to provide the best support. Components of the incident management program. Why do you need an incident command system anyway? Well, here's a cute little movie that might speak to it.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He's the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here, and if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, you know?
You see the movies, you hear the stories, I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't a feeling like in the world.
BDS, managing the complexities of e-business.
Okay, so that's a cute one, but it does speak to a bit of the notion of the incident command system, which is we're herding cats. The lessons learned from the deployment of auxiliaries to those large events that I mentioned a few moments ago included things like the qualification vetting process. We have to make sure our auxiliaries meet Coast Guard standards and procedures when they fulfill the different roles in the incident command system. Resource tracking of auxiliaries, making sure they get where they're supposed to be going and that they're cared for. Finances, travel costs, lodging, of course, and food. That process is prohibitive for many members, and travel requirements weren't standard or communicated what to bring, what not to bring. Conflicting plans. There were plans on the auxiliary side in some parts of the country, plans on the active duty side. They weren't always in sync. And then after demobilization and the return of auxiliaries, proper follow-up to make sure people get reimbursed appropriately, that there's any, care and feeding of auxiliary members where it differs from active duty or reserve. As mentioned earlier, the DSO Incident Management will work with the ASC to ensure that the district is prepared. We're contemplating how the auxiliary can work to provide backfill, surge operations, direct augmentation, and any other crisis or contingency resource requests of the auxiliary by the sectors. The DSO IM will be working with the ASCs and the sectors on pre-identifying their needs and therefore the training and logistical requirements for the auxiliaries. And then, along with our leadership, see that we can fill these needs. Obviously, this speaks to a long-term program. There's going to be a ramp-up time here. Nonetheless, we're going to work hard to see what it is our active duty colleagues want and need and how we can best provide that. The DSO-IM works with the sector coordinators to ensure that our members are properly vetted, appropriately equipped, and trained. So this would include things like maintaining lists of qualified auxiliaries, communicating availability of training, and aiding the ASCs in updating the district on sector needs. We'll also work with the sectors and the ASCs in their contingency crisis planning efforts to include the auxiliary in their contingency plans. I'll mention that again in a moment. This is right out of some of your ICS training, I think 200. This is the types of incidents. Down at the bottom of this pyramid, you'll see Type 5 incident. That's an incident that requires perhaps one small crew, a boat crew, a couple of people, and one work shift. The clocks represent work shifts, which in ICS we call operational periods. So one work shift or less, one crew or less, could be called a Type 5 incident, and that's normally regular work. A SAR call out, a first aid call, law enforcement, public health, emergency medical services, fire services do this stuff all the time. A Type 4 incident may require more than one crew. It may require more than one operational period. And then a Type 3 incident is the tipping point incident. Typically, that's a call, an incident or an event that has the potential to go large or get complex, but may or may not based on the actions and the circumstances. So it requires more people, perhaps takes more operational periods. It's the first type of incident where a written incident action plan is strongly suggested in the world of ICS. And then Type 2 incidents and Type 1 incidents are incidents of regional significance or even national significance. Type 1 is Hurricane Katrina, Deepwater Horizon, really large. The vast majority of all incidents in our Coast Guard world are Type 3 or less. And so the use of incident management teams is not necessary. It's typically handled by the daily organization that exists in the Coast Guard. But when you get larger or longer, that's when incidents require augmentation, and that's where the auxiliary is poised to provide some qualified and capable resources. Now, as a quick I-200 refresher, let me show you the world of incident action planning for initial response. That's a big oops. In any case, another tongue-in-cheek presentation. Here's where we're going. Here's another refresher slide. This is from I-700. These are the boxes when we've been talking about the incident command system. These are the boxes, the positions that set the stage for the organization. In our private lives, in our business lives, our non-auxiliary lives, we've all worked in organizations, perhaps, that have hierarchies, that have org charts, that have relationships. The incident command system is the same thing. The key point is it's the same org chart and the same roles and the same titles across the country, in all 50 states, in all the territories, tribes, state and local governments, in all the different disciplines. That's the benefit of using the incident command system. Back to our incident types. Again, at the Type 3 level, each sector in the active duty Coast Guard has been directed to establish a Type 3 capable incident management team. And that may be an opportunity for us. I'll be asking that question of the active duty side during the month of April 2015. Type 3 incident management team at its minimum is 8 positions: the incident commander, the 3 command staff, and the 4 general staff positions. And the Type 3 IMT can build as the incident requires by adding units below. And this is where I see some opportunity for auxiliarists to be qualified at unit levels, perhaps at command staff levels. Public affairs folks could fit into public information pretty easy. This is all subject to what we find out from our active duty colleagues, and then of course provision of training and qualification. This eye chart right here is a Coast Guard ICS form right off of Homeport, which I'll tell you about in a few minutes. It's the ICS 207 org chart, and you'll see on the right hand side a lot of the unit positions are pre-filled. So you can download this form off the internet, take a look at it, and that's the place where we might focus our energy: unit worker positions, unit leader positions. Remember, we use the planning P. This is the world of ICS 300 now, in terms of managing all the folks in this incident command system organization. Down here, the leg of the P is the world of initial response. These are the type 1, 2, and maybe type 3 incidents where we go take care of a problem fairly quickly and it's done. Incident action planning is often done in your head. There is not necessarily a written incident action plan. There may be a briefing form, ICS 201. That's always a good tool to use. But if we get into a multi-operational period, we start using the planning P, and this is what incident management teams get good at, is spinning and using this planning P. The incident commander or commanders set the objectives for the incident. We have a tactics meeting to figure out how we're going to do that. We roll into a planning meeting to figure out how the organization is going to support the operations that need to be done. We build a written incident action plan. We brief the operators, the field people on it. Their work period starts. They work through the operational period, and we assess how they're going. The ops section chief does most of that, comes back, and the process starts again. So we spin this planning P every operational period, generating a new incident action plan, taking into account how we are being successful at our objectives and any new things that have come up. Let's talk training for a minute. 3 areas of training: general incident command system training, team training, and position training. General incident command training is what we're all familiar with. ICS 100, 200, or 210, 7 and 800, those are the online courses we all take for boat crew and for other positions within the auxiliary. 300 is the next class, and that's the one where you work the planning P as part of a small incident management team. It's a 32-hour class in the Coast Guard. It's a 24-hour class in the FEMA version, and it's a prerequisite to have for all other position training in the Coast Guard. So that's something we need to focus on, asking questions on how we provide it. There are limited opportunities for the auxiliary to participate in the active duty offerings right now. So there is room to work on this. ICS 400 is area command and managing a number of large-scale incidents in different different ways to organize above and beyond a single incident. Team training, which I don't have a slide on, is simply what it sounds like. It's taking an incident management team or a group of people who are going to work together and putting them through scenarios that work on group dynamics and just the skills necessary to work with people in a high-stress environment. Position training is based on what position you want. One question I have for all of you out there is, are there folks with existing qualifications? I'm sure there are. I've met some of you. Emergency managers, fire professionals, law enforcement, emergency or medical or public health. If you have existing qualifications or you had someone you retired, I'd sure like to hear about that so I can fold that into my discussions with the active duty to show them the expertise and experience that's out there. Some of the questions are FEMA training versus Coast Guard training, what's acceptable. And so at the bottom here you can see some of this is to be determined. The good news is the Coast Guard, because they take ICS so seriously and have for a long time, they have quality training, they have quality job aids. Yes, they have high standards, and they support those high standards by providing opportunities for people to learn and work and improve. Here's a cover sheet from one of their PQSs. You can find these online off the Coast Guard website, off the auxiliary website. They're the same type of PQS format that you're familiar with if you've been in the California system at all, or in the Coast Guard system for other auxiliary functions. This is, you take the class on Planning Section Chief Type 3, then you go out and do the work and are signed off on it before you're actually qualified to perform. Again, in terms of training, currently the auxiliary is the 5th out of 6 priorities, so that's fairly low. That's part of the discussions we'll have ongoing with the active duty based on how they need us. So something for you to reflect on is, where do you see the auxiliary fitting in incident management teams? What can we do now? How could we help the active duty in ways that I may not have mentioned or thought about? And then how can we as auxiliarists use ICS and incident management now to learn and stay sharp? That was my pitch for using the incident command system and writing an incident action plan for flotilla and or division activities. The Antlers Optrex is already in the incident action plan format. And I've seen a couple other good examples. And I'll try to post that example for us on the incident management website at D11 North. But I would encourage you to start thinking about how you can use ICS very simply to do the same stuff you're already doing. It doesn't change what you do at all, but to do those same functions with ICS terminology as you plan your flotilla picnic, or perhaps change a watch, or some other event or activity. And I'm going to offer myself as a coach or trainer, if you want some just-in-time or down-and-dirty refresher training on the incident command system, I'm happy to provide that. I've been an I-300 instructor and I-400 instructor for years, both the FEMA and the Coast Guard version, as well as other position training. So that was the world of incident management. Let's move on to contingency planning and preparedness. As you can imagine, as a military organization with even broader responsibilities, the Coast Guard has a family of plans. These are just several examples. In addition, these are plans that the Commandant requires all units to maintain. And many of these plans have the possibility of auxiliary involvement. In particular, on this page, continuity of operations, major marine disaster, natural disaster, mass rescue operations, civil disturbances, oil and hazardous substance response, combating terrorism, which we accomplish through MOM patrols and other things now. The auxiliary can play a role in these things. We know our limitations. We don't do law enforcement and we don't participate in military activities, but nonetheless, there are plenty of areas for us to support. And then oil spill plans. In the world of contingency planning in the Coast Guard, there are some general assumptions. And one of those assumptions is that the number of personnel available includes active duty, reserve, and the auxiliary apportioned by the district or area. Likewise, there's a further assumption that Coast Guard, reserve, and auxiliary forces will be used in contingency planning to the maximum extent. So this is another area of conversation that incident management program will be having with active duty to see how they envision this. How does all this apply to the auxiliary? The real-world application is that many folks may not be aware of these general assumptions on both sides. So I've been tasked with knowing what plans to review, basically informing, advising, educating folks that the auxiliary is an integral part of all plans, and it just gives us common ground to discuss getting our district on board with sector planning. Did you know that we have our own contingency plan? I'll post this on the incident management website as well, but this one's dated May of 2011. I don't expect you to be able to read it, but it is our District 11 North contingency plan, and I'll be getting into this one as well, checking it for updates and working with other folks around the district who have contributed to this plan or developed it or written it. So another reflection point for you is, what is the auxiliary role in contingency planning? Is there stuff that we can do now to help this function? Next area, auxiliary notification. How do we get a hold of auxiliarists when we need them? Of course, we have our existing systems. And what we're talking about is routine communications. We usually see emails from our e-postmaster. But how would we mobilize auxiliary members and assets or advise them of impending incidents? And we've seen different examples of this around the country in other districts, as well as post-incident member accountability. The sector commanders are responsible to account for all of their members, active reserve and auxiliary. So how can we help make that happen? There are a couple of ways. I guess we currently use phone trees within our divisions. There was an attempt at using a software system called Everbridge a few years ago. It was not successful in our district, but we're being encouraged to look at it again. And this time it comes with a lot more user support and user support and training from National to us if we want to try it again. We were shown the example of pre-incident advisory, where on the East Coast folks could warn all their auxiliarists through the Everbridge system of an impending hurricane. To go back a slide, if any of you in your communities are participate in your cities or counties community alerting system, something like Code Red, that's a trade name, this is the same thing. Everbridge is a dialing system where a super user makes a message and then it pushes the message out to a bunch of phone numbers that you as a receiver designate. Do you want it to call your home? Do you want it to call your cell? Do you want it to send you a text message or an email? The system's pretty powerful. It's a commercial system. In fact, some of our auxiliarists use it in their business lives to do staffing and notification of their employees. So it's something that we may see again if we can be assured that it's well supported and works for us. So something else, what do you need from auxiliary notification and how can we get it? Finally, the skills bank. Many of you may know about this already, but in terms of not just incident command and incident management augmentation, but unique skills that auxiliarists possess, how can we discover those and let the active duty side know? The example we were given at Entrain was we need a carpenter to help do some work at our boat station. Well, theoretically, if you are a carpenter and you're willing to use those skills on behalf of the auxiliary, you could make note of that in the skills bank. The skills bank is found on our district webpage. You can see the webpage, and the little red circle down at the bottom is a way to access a skills bank. Also, if you go into Aux directory, you can edit your own skills bank right there. The output looks something like this, and you can see down at the bottom, you have a chance here. Can you correct this information? You can edit availability, what it is you do, and if you want to be available. And this is not a tell. If you do not want to be available, you don't have to put yourself available. This is another volunteer opportunity only. So I want to make that very clear to folks. So the question in this regard is, what do you need in terms of skills bank, and how can your skills or the skills of willing auxiliarists be used by the active duty? So as you can see, this is a pretty wide-ranging program, and the duties of the district staff officer incident management seem to be pretty wide-ranging as well. So what, you may be asking? Well, the so what is, do you want to help? Right now, we have one Deputy Assistant District Staff Officer, that's Will Sumner, but we may need others. As we form this program and we find the areas in which we're going to work, it'll be helpful for us to identify Assistant District Staff Officers who are willing. So stand by to stand by. If you're interested now, shoot me an email. If you have qualifications now, shoot me an email. Some of the basic philosophy as we move into relationship of IM with other programs, some of the basic philosophies that I have that so far I haven't got any pushback on in developing this program include don't fix what already works, don't create duplicate systems, take advantage of the good work being done already in our district, and I believe in a crawl, walk, run approach. Let's start with some small successes in the world of IM and build on that rather than try to do everything at once and have it collapse. So in the current world of the auxiliary, we have people doing a lot of work already. In marine safety, Will Sumner has been working on a variety of programs, and marine safety often talks with the incident management program in the active duty side. And that's a much broader program than just the incident command system in the active duty world. So we have to make sure we're meshing well. Information services, communication services, these notification systems may or may not lie within those worlds. Member training, we've been talking about training already, so how do we work with the member training folks? We've already talked after D-Train about providing an ICS refresher and tabletop exercise to kind of shake loose some of the cobwebs and put that together for the next PCA fair. So stand by for that. ASCs, of course, I've mentioned several times. I've had a couple of conversations each with the San Francisco and Humboldt ASCs, and that will continue. Human resources and operations. Incident management lies under operations now in terms of our district organization. But the key point is we want to keep everybody informed about what's going on and make sure we're not going down an unnecessary path. We really do want to be efficient and take advantage of programs that are already working. So if you see any relationship gaps or overlaps or needs or efficiencies, and you have ideas, again, shoot me an email. We did the tabletop exercise. I already mentioned this, and I'll reiterate my offer to you. If you want to do a planned event in your flotilla or district and you want some ICS coaching to develop an incident action plan, if I can travel to you, I will. If we can Skype or conference call, we can do that. The forms are free and available on our website. And sometimes it just takes a walkthrough to see. ICS and the forms are just a tool to make happen in the world of ICS organization what you're already making happen. So that was our exercise. Again, the big pitch here is that by using this system, we're starting to learn to speak the language. That makes us more credible with our active duty colleagues. That makes us more usable. And finally, let's take a quick look at, this is a war story, so if you're done listening, you can be done listening here. But this is an incident management assistance team event in August of 2011 for Hurricane Irene. The ESPA incident management team was requested to support the city and state of New York in their preparation. You may remember this is the year before Hurricane Sandy. Hurricane Irene was just as large. It was heading right for Manhattan. So the city of New York had established its EOC, Emergency Operations Center, and they had a lot of work to do and needed more organizational assistance. So they requested a lot of outside teams, and our team was one of the ones that went. We arrived in New York City to find the city shut down. If you've ever been to Manhattan, to see nobody on the streets and the subway closed, it's something. Here's the Brooklyn Bridge at 4 in the afternoon. Pretty amazing. So we set up our team in a hotel. The EOC for the city of New York is downtown Brooklyn. We set up in a conference room and then went off to, we were assigned work within their ICS system, working for the logistics section with a few missions in mind. This is the city of New York's EOC. They had done tons of contingency planning. This is an inundation map for the 5 boroughs. There's Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Staten Island. I didn't know that 4 years ago, but I know it now. And they've done lots of contingency planning, but the notion of surge capacity is you don't have everybody you need on a daily basis. You have to call them in. And guess what they use to plan? Here's our friend the Planning P. So that's that notion of a common process. You work with different people wearing different uniforms, National Guard folks, fire folks, emergency managers, public health people. But if we can all speak the same language, it makes it very powerful. At the end of the day, what happened is Hurricane Sandy hung a left and went around, Irene hung a left and went around the city of New York. So when we woke up the next morning, the skies were blue, traffic was rolling again, and the 92 shelters that they had deployed were no longer necessary. Their shelters were deployed into public schools, which were due to open in another week. So you can imagine the urgency at clearing the public shelters of all the stuff they had deployed: cots, food, water, diapers, pet food. They'd done a fantastic job of creating shelters for their citizens, but they hadn't gotten to the point of planning demobilizing the shelters. So we built a quick lesson plan, trained National Guard folks that you see on the slide into how to repack, repalletize material, and we were going to turn around and go back home. But what happened with Hurricane Irene is it went around the city and then smacked into upstate New York, devastating a number of counties to the west and north of the city. The state EOC called and asked if we could redeploy and split our team into two groups, which we could. So the state EOC in Albany retasked us to go work in a couple of different counties in upstate New York. I took my half of the team to Essex County. This is their public safety center. It's the county jail, 911 center, sheriff's office, and state trooper substation. So it's a wonderful building with a robust state-of-the-art EOC. The problem, as you can see, is the picture is that the workers who should have been there were victims of the storm and hurricane, and so weren't there. So the purpose of an IMAT, Incident Management Assistance Team, is often just to fill seats because your regular duty folks are either off doing first response missions or are victims of the incident. The other half of the team went to Delaware County, and this is where they wound up. The primary EOC in Delaware County had been flooded out. This is the backup EOC at the county fairgrounds, and it too wound up being flooded out. So that's the environment in which you work as an IMT member can be different. Adirondacks National Forest is where we were, quite a beautiful area. Floods are messy. There's just a lot of damage. The purpose of the IMT is to work the process. We're not responders, but we gather information. We provide public affairs. We help with damage assessment. We help liaise between the different levels of government. So there's a number of functions. At the end of the day, floods are messy, and people need support in a variety of ways, and it's the function of the county's plan to make that happen. We worked as the county's workers to help do that. Essex County is the home of Lake Placid, where the Winter Olympics were held, so I had to take a picture of the ski jump. If any of you remember the Wide World of Sports opening, I get that a lot more now. You do a variety of functions that you may not instantly appreciate. We thought another tropical storm was coming on the heels of Hurricane Irene, so we were paying a lot of attention to weather forecasting and calling the National Weather Service, trying to pinpoint, because we had several dams that were in danger of failing. The purpose of the system is to bring order to chaos. So you help organize in the operations world. You're not out directing field operations, nor would I expect our auxiliaries be doing that, but you can help organize. Public affairs folks, or in the ICS world, public information officers, can give briefings, hold media events. In this rural county, it was a weekly newspaper and a daily newspaper. The TV station was actually across the river in another state, in Vermont. Nonetheless, we did hold a press conference as requested by the county officials. And you hold briefings and plans and tell the operators from a bunch of different agencies what you're going to do on a regular basis. Logistics folks acquire stuff. Now, from California, we don't know where to get it, but the folks in New York had emergency resource directories, so we could begin acquiring the supplies they needed to help their citizens. And then interesting things happen along the way that the IMT has to adjust to. Well-meaning businesses provide services, but I'm sure the local police chief and sheriff want to know if there's a mobile ATM that parks in the middle of their town. And likewise, response efforts like this potable water trailer sometimes get stuck, and we have to figure out a workaround. Good news for the other half of the team, the floodwaters did recede from their EOC, so they were able to get to work there. But this is the kind of, just generically, the type of duties you could see being done by qualified ICS folks in incidents. My last little sea story for you, how did we get to New York? As you can imagine, as a hurricane is going up the East Coast, commercial air traffic is shutting down. We had to get to the city of New York from the San Francisco Bay Area. Well, the fire service and our team had a relationship with the Air Force for our urban search and rescue team. So we made a phone call to, once we saw that commercial airlines were not viable, we were really thinking we weren't going to make it to the event until a few days after. We dropped a dime and called Travis Air Force Base. And while the Air Force folks are really good at what they do in terms of getting orders to fly us across the country, they told us it would be a few days for them to run it up the flagpole and get proper approval from their chain of command. One of our other bright logs guys, logistics people, said, well, the Coast Guard has airplanes, let's call them. So guess what? An immediate answer from the U.S. Coast Guard was, of course, we'll fly you from Oakland to New York. And the answer came so fast, I actually had a moment of bureaucratic disbelief. And I asked my logistics chief to get that in writing. Within 15 minutes, beep boop, I had an email saying that the Coast Guard, without expectation of reimbursement, agrees to fly the incident management team from Oakland to LaGuardia, meet you at the airport fire station at midnight. And sure enough, at midnight, a Coast Guard C-130 showed up. We put our 32 members and all their stuff onto, they had like palletized airline seats that they roll into this C-130. And our crew hops in with all of our stuff, and off we go. Pretty Spartan conditions. I'm sure some of you auxiliarists know this. Nonetheless, it was just an amazing function that they did, no questions asked. It was just outstanding, and it warmed my heart. And later, after I retired, when I saw that the Coast Guard had an auxiliary, it was pretty easy to say, I want to be part of that organization. So here we are landing in LaGuardia. It had been closed to all aircraft, but not military aircraft. And they offloaded us quickly and took off for better skies, clearer skies, and we were off doing our work. That's just an amazing feat for me, from my perspective, a very mission-driven perspective. So if you have questions, comments, or feedback, please don't hesitate to drop me a line. I'll do my best to answer it. Stay tuned at PCA Fair for more offerings. Stay tuned for more information to come through. And thank you very much for this, for paying attention to this presentation. Take care.